it's understanding that everything that we have is God's.
Hmm.
Like every single thing that we have, it's not ours. And so that allows me to then open up my hands and just be able to live with my hands wide open and not clinging tightly
Yeah.
to I can't give this away. I can't, I need to keep this for myself, but to recognize I want to be a conduit for God to just flow through.
Welcome to The Home and the Maker, sharing advice and encouragement about all topics homemaking and homesteading, and honoring the maker in all of it. Join Megan from Shine.fm for today's conversation. When money is tight at home, how do we navigate spending wisely? Or when life is busy and overwhelming at home, how do we make life simpler? My guest on the podcast today is Crystal Payne, who is a wife and a mom of six who has built a business online around the name Money Saving Mom and encouraging women in saving money and simplifying life. So thanks for joining me today, Crystal.
Thanks so much for having me, Megan.
So, how did this journey start for you? How did you go from, we need to save money to now this is a kind of your life, yeah, your life, your business, and teaching others how to budget, save money?
Well, it definitely was not something that I would have ever seen myself doing. It's funny because somebody this morning, I was talking about how I'd gotten a C in PE, and they were like, well, you probably were really good in math. And I was like, oh no, I actually struggled a lot in math in school. And so, you know how it's just interesting how your story takes these turns you never would have envisioned. But my husband and I got married 23 years ago, and we made the decision to try to stay out of debt while he went through law school.
Mm,
We were both raised by parents who had set really great financial just models for us. And so we'd seen this set before us. I feel like we had a huge leg up. Most people don't have that. And
yeah.
so we went into marriage from day one with a budget. And then this really audacious goal that he was going to go through law school. We were going to stay out of debt. And that's really where the rubber met the road because we quickly figured out, okay, we had the money set aside for school and he was going in state and he had scholarships. So school wasn't actually that expensive and that was covered, but it was the day to day. How
Yeah.
are we going to eat? We're going to pay the light bill. How are we going to pay our rent? And so we had to just get really, really creative. And my mom had actually taught me how to use coupons when I was growing up. I was homeschooled, a family of nine, and I had to do the grocery shopping and menu planning and cooking for our family for 2 years. So I had gotten a lot of experience with that, but I needed to take it even further. And so I
Yeah.
started researching everything online about saving money. I found these forums and I learned about playing the drugstore game and just really just stepped it up. And so then different people would start saying to me, how are you doing that? And so I was putting together a list for my friends of these are the deals that I'm getting at the local stores every week. And at that same time, I was also learning blogging. This was back in 2004, 2005. Blogging was a brand new thing. And I started thinking, people are asking me a little bit on this blog about how we're saving money. And I started blogging more about that. And by 2007, just decided I'm putting together these lists for my friends. I might as well put them out on the internet. So I started moneysavingmom.com, never envisioning it was going to be our full-time thing. Like it was just going to be this little side thing where I was going to share a
Yeah.
few deals every week. And within a year, we were making a full-time income off of it. And it
That's
was really kind
amazing.
of like right time, right place. The economy had really tanked. Coupons were becoming a big thing. And a lot of times the media, they'd be having their, I don't know, talk show, morning talk show, and they'd say, you should use coupons at the grocery store. And people would go Google and they'd come to my site because there weren't very many sites that were doing what I was doing. And so that's really how it started. And it just took off far beyond what we could have ever dreamed
Yeah.
or imagined.
That's amazing. I love that so much. So, on your website, on Instagram, you have a lot of different tips, a lot of different encouragement for saving money. But if you had like a top three, the top three ones that come to your mind to share on this podcast.
So I think first off, you need to have a plan for your money. Like that's the biggest thing. And so many people they want to jump into, let's do the fun stuff, let's cut our grocery bill, let's find. And I'm like, if you don't have a plan for your money in the first place, you're not going to know whether you're saving or whether you're actually spending more money trying to save.
Yeah.
So I always recommend that people start with a plan. And if you don't if the thought of setting up a budget is so foreign to you, although I feel like your audience probably they're probably good at this, but if there are some people who are listening who are like, I never really actually had a budget, or we tried it, it didn't work, I suggest that you start with your grocery budget because everybody needs to buy groceries, and it's a
Hmm.
great way to be able to just practice sticking with a budget. And so if you're going in store, I actually recommend that you bring cash only, which I know for a lot of people that really freaks them out. But here's the thing, a cash envelope and no debit cards, no credit cards, no checkbook when you're at the store is instant budgeting success because you are forced to stick with your budget. And
Right.
that right there is going to help you learn so much if you've never just used cash as your budget because you're going to figure out, oh, how much am I actually spending? You're going to learn when you're putting things in your cart. Like you're going to pay attention to prices and all of
Yeah.
that. And so I would really say start with a budget. We use the YNAB program, youneedabudget.com. That's what we use for our budgeting. It's a paid service, but we've just found it works really well. We actually use it for our personal and for our business. We like that you can set up multiple accounts. So like our 20-year-old daughter, she can have an account on there as well.
Oh,
And it syncs across all your devices. So number one, I would say set up a budget. Secondly, I would say to focus on ways that you can cut your grocery budget. Because like I said, like everybody has to buy groceries. It's one
yes.
of the easiest areas to cut. And so I would start with just challenging yourself to shave off 1 to 3% every single month. And that doesn't feel exciting, but over time, that's really going to add up. And I think that the slow and steady pace of cutting your grocery budget is going to be a lot more sustainable than if you try to cut it overnight.
Yeah.
And then I feel like with your audience, one of the things that you can save so much money by doing things yourself. And you do have to weigh the cost of time. So my third piece of advice would be to really pay attention to how much something is saving you per hour. And so
Mm.
there are many different things that you could do to save money, but not all of them are going to be worth your time. You need to pick and choose because your time is valuable too. And so really think of, okay, what is my hourly wage? If you don't have a job outside the home, then you just set an hourly wage. Like for you, what do you want to make sure that you are saving per hour by employing any type of money saving strategy? Now, it's going to be different. If it's something that you just love doing, like let's say you love gardening and it's soul giving and all of that, like don't worry about how much money you're saving because in some cases it's kind of sad if you like think about how much time you put in to get that tomato. In
Right.
other cases, depending on where you live and how you garden, it can actually be a great deal. But so just really paying attention, if I'm doing this specifically to actually save money, how much money am I saving? And that really helps me to decide, okay, what are the priorities of my life and what are the things that I'm going to be like, you know what, actually, I might pay someone to do that. I might find just a less expensive alternative that I'm not going to do myself. And I'm going to stick with these, top 20 things over here because I know these are really saving me a lot of money for the time that I'm investing.
That's awesome. Even when I was looking online at your posts, that was kind of a new concept for me as far as thinking about your time involvement in it. As far as, okay, I can do all these things to save money, but if it's costing me my time, or I think one of the words you even used was your sanity,
Yes.
then that's not helpful either. So I thought that was a really cool thing to think about, factoring that into kind of planning how you save money.
I think it's
Um,
also really encouraging because then you think of, like for instance, making homemade Uncrustables. This is an example that I give. Doing the math on that. If I buy them in store, they're almost like they're 75 cents to $1 per sandwich. And
okay.
I can make them so inexpensively if I get the ingredients when they're on sale and I stock up and I stick my bread in the freezer, or you can make your own bread. And then if you think about, oh, for this 15 minutes that I invested, like how much money I saved, for like Uncrustables, it's probably going to be at least $15. And you think about, oh, that would be $60 an hour if I were, to calculate that out. And it just really helps you. It kind of makes you feel fulfilled of like, oh, that was totally worth my time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's a great idea as well. So going into summer, as we head into a lot of fun, maybe there's pressure from or pressure for moms to try to make summer exciting for the kids, try to plan these activities. How do you encourage planning for the summer and doing fun things that are exciting, but that also don't break the budget?
So one thing that we found really helpful is kind of pick the one thing. So whether that's, or maybe it's two things, but like, so for instance, we got a gym membership for the summer because they have 2.5 hours of childcare and they do classes during the childcare. So that's every single day so the cost of that versus like if we were to go and farm out, classes at different places and all that, it would be crazy expensive or get babysitting or whatever. And so that was one thing that we did. And we also got a Zoom membership. And so
Oh.
kind of, picking, okay, these are the two things, and we're just going to do a whole lot of those two things instead of doing a bunch of different things, just kind of decide. And it also keeps it really simple because it's like, are we going to go to the gym today? Yes, probably. Are we going to go to the zoo today? Maybe, and it's like, just like those are the two things that we do in addition to things at home. And then there are also plenty of other things that you can do for free. But for us, it's just been helpful. We pick the few things, kind of think about how much money this is going to cost us. And then I think about actually per day. So, like per
Mhm.
day, how much is this going to cost us? And then I'm thinking, okay, is my return on my investment for what I'm getting per day? Well, yeah, for the gym membership, I'm like, absolutely, that is totally worth, it makes it like such a microscopic amount that I'm spending per day. But just if I only have a few things that we choose from, then I'm more apt to really use those things well. And I think for our kids also, we have a 5-year-old, 4-year-old, and 2-year-old, in addition to our three older kids. And it just simplifies things for them too. If it's, it's like, here are the options. We have two options, which do you
Yeah.
want to do today? So.
That's good. That's good. Now, how would you encourage someone? So, the married couple, double income, no kids yet. They're in the season of life where you want to save up for the things, but also this is the time of life to, before having kids, to go on adventures, to spend time with each other. So, when they're presented with opportunities to go travel or to go do exciting things, what is your encouragement or basically advice for budgeting for those things while saving up for the big things?
Yeah, so I think, starting with that budget and then looking at, okay, how much are we going to budget for travel and fun things? Like budget that in. I think so often people think of a budget as that is just your bare bones, like what you need to survive. No, no, no. We budget for every single thing. And so then we're budgeting for travel. We're setting aside money every single month that is in our travel fund. And so then when that opportunity presents itself, we can just look and be like, do we have the money for it?
Gotcha.
And if we don't, is there a creative way that we can make this work with what we have? Maybe it's, thinking outside the box a little bit. Maybe it's like we went to Iceland one summer as a family.
Ooh,
We wanted to go on, and we love traveling, and we wanted to travel internationally. And so we could do it with our budget. But the one thing is that food is very expensive if you go to restaurants in Iceland.
okay.
Not a local. And so we ended up bringing an entire large suitcase full of food. And we got hot dogs one night, and I think we got Subway another night, and then we went to the grocery store there. And that was like we did not spend money on food. And so we saved literally, I mean, it was well over $1,000 because
Wow.
how expensive food costs are there by bringing our own food. Was it, did we get a little tired of like packaged granola bars? Yes. But the deal was, for our kids, I think for them to be like, we got to see all these really cool things and we
Mhm.
did it and stuck with our budget.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that so much. So, life aside from travel, regular life at home, do you have, I know you shared one on Instagram, like what you and your husband do as far as blocking off some time together, but do you have basically tested things you've done with your family for cheap, inexpensive, efficient date nights or family outings, especially as we go into the summer?
Well, one of the things that we just love to do is find the free things in our local area. And I think you can literally Google, wherever, especially like if there's a town that's an hour away or something, like you want to do a day trip and just free things to do there and get lots of ideas. And So, kind of becoming a tourist in
Yeah.
your area is a fun thing to do. And then another thing that we've done, our older kids, they're 20, 17, and almost 16. And we did so many different adventures with them, but we would have where we'd give them a budget sometimes. So we'd say, okay, we have X amount of money to spend to do, and then let them actually decide how we were going to spend it. And that can be such a great learning experience for
Yeah.
them. Like they get to learn how much things cost and how, how to budget out. But then it also becomes fun because they have gotten so creative. Like my three older kids are so creative with how they spend their money because we did this so many times when they were younger. Like if we had $10 extra in our grocery budget, I'd sometimes take them and be like, okay, we split it up and everybody gets, X, like a few dollars. And then we'd see like who could get the most amount for those few dollars. And it'd be
That's
a
so
competition. And so
fun.
we do lots of fun things like that to just make it a game. And I feel like when you make saving money a game and you involve your kids in it, instead of being like, no, we can't do that, instead it's like, what can we do? Then they see also the value of that. They learn those skills. They learn to think outside the box. They learn to be creative, and you have fun and you make memories in the process.
Absolutely. I love that so much. Now, immediately on seeing like your brand name, the Money Saving Mom, I immediately think coupons. So do you still coupon? Are you still using the paper coupons? Are you mostly digital couponing? Are there different places to find those coupons? Because I'm a firm believer in the grocery store couponing. I love that as far as like on the digital apps, but are there any other places that you go to find those coupons?
Yes, so I do. I used to actually years ago had this big Tupperware container with
Yes.
all the envelopes and it was all organized. It's a different ball game nowadays, but
Mhm.
I actually this last year was the first time we have Kroger, and I actually signed up for the Kroger Boost membership, and I started getting groceries delivered just with having three younger children. Their gas savings paid like paid for the membership times four because of how much
Wow.
money we gas. And then plus they have, I mean, free delivery to my door, and no tipping is allowed if you order through the Blue Kroger track, not Instacart. And then also they have special coupons throughout the year just for Boost members. Anyway, so I actually stopped shopping in store most of the time. And so I only use the digital coupons on the app. The thing that I do is that, so like with Kroger, you can buy, it's a limit of five for most of their things. And so if it's something that I know we're going to use, then it's a great deal. I'm going to buy all five. I'm not going to be like, well, we only need one this week. And so that's really one of the things that has helped save so much money is practicing the buy ahead principle. So when you find a great deal, make sure that you buy extra to last you until the next sale, which
Yeah.
most stores have a good sale every 6 to 12 weeks on every item. But as far as coupons, most now, I think digital apps are the where you're going to get the best deals. I mean, there still are some paper coupons, but they're just not at all what they once were. Now, I will say that drugstores, I mentioned earlier about the drugstore game. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but basically just where you're earning cash back each week by buying certain items. But they also have coupons that you can stack on those deals, and sometimes you can double stack. So basically, you could do the deal and then actually use two coupons because of how it's set up. So every week, my older sister actually she posts on moneysavingmom.com. She does Walgreens and CVS, and so if people are interested in that, that is another way. It's usually a lot of hygiene type products, but sometimes they'll have some food products as well. And so that's a fun way. If you have a little bit of extra time and you're in kind of a season of life where you're like, you know what? I would love to be able to save $30 a week for, spending an hour of time. I think that that can be something that's really valuable. And then you just roll those over every week. So the cash back that you get, you use to pay for the next week. So you pay very little out of pocket. And you
Mm.
just keep doing that over and over and over again. And back when I used to do it, we had a whole closet full of all the things that I'd gotten for just pennies each. And so we never, I mean, for years, we never paid for toothpaste and toothbrushes and deodorant and shampoo and all the things because I just was able to get it that way. And my sister still, it's not quite as good as it used to be, but it's still pretty good. And
Mhm.
so that's that I would encourage people to check into if you have a little bit of extra time.
Gotcha. Okay, that's awesome. Now,
So I've seen, and some friends will sometimes say, hey, there's these apps where you can basically, they will pay you if you do this with your groceries. And so immediately I'm skeptical. But do you have any that you have used, or can you speak into the skepticism and say, you know what, these things are actually trustworthy, and you can earn some money, or you can pay for some things through such apps like that?
Yes. Okay. So we actually work directly with a lot of those app companies. So I'm very, very familiar with them. Three that I'll recommend that have been around for a long time that I've personally used and that I have never heard of anyone having an issue with. And that's like thousands and thousands of people. So the Fetch app is one that's super easy. All you do is you're scanning your receipts and you can scan not just grocery receipts, you can scan gas station receipts. Like I think it's up to 15 receipts a week that you can scan.
Okay.
You're only going to earn a few pennies for it. This is something that my kids love to do, like because it's just a fun thing, like scan the app. So you can even have your kids do it and then you don't do it. But that, it adds up. And there's a lot of people I know that they will use these apps and then at the end of the year, they take whatever they've earned and they use it to pay for Christmas. So the Fetch app is one. Another one is Shopkick. And that one is basically you earn kicks, is what it's called. They're points for walking into stores and scanning things on shelves. You don't have to buy them or buying certain items. And so that one's pretty easy that you can earn somewhere between like $3 to $5 a week. So if you are shopping in store, you might as well open up the app and see if you can take a few minutes to do that because it really does add up. And then another one is Ibotta. And Ibotta is it's Ibotta. That one, you earn cash back for buying certain things. And so it depends upon what you buy, but it's worth opening up the app to see, before you shop or after you shop, did I buy anything that I can get cash back for? A lot of times they will have where you can get cash back for just any item, like you bought a gallon of milk, didn't matter what the brand is, or
Okay.
bread or something like that. So they'll, it'll usually just be like 20 cents, 30 cents, but then it might also be, there might be two or three other things that you bought that you're going to earn, a dollar or two on or something. So it's like, it's just worth, I would say it's like 30 seconds to open up the app
Yeah.
and usually save at least a few dollars, at least 30 cents. That's worth your 30 seconds. And
Yeah.
so again, thinking in terms of how much am I saving over the course of an hour, it's worth opening up an app for 30 seconds in order to save a little bit of money. And so those are three that there are many others out there, but those are three that I have a lot of experience with and would recommend.
Gotcha. Okay. So now switching gears a little bit to the simplifying life aspect, something else that I've seen on your Instagram as far as creating not necessarily systems, but also just kind of setting up structure for yourself to make life easier. So whether that's doing these things before bed, doing these things in the morning before work, what happens when sickness hits or when you come back from vacation and you're out of routine? How do you get yourself back into those rhythms that you've created for yourself?
I would say to start very simple when it comes to routines and rhythms. So don't set up, this is our entire day. Let's start with three things you're going to do every morning. And honestly, for me, my morning routine and my evening routine, I've done them for so long that it doesn't matter really unless I'm so sick that I can't get out of bed or something like that. But then I'm not going to need a routine anyway. So it's really just, it becomes such a habit that you just do it without thinking,
Yeah.
And so, like for me, the first thing I do every single morning is I go and I open up our back door and I go look at the morning light. I'm all into sunlight before screen, circadian rhythm. And so I just do it without thinking,
Yeah.
again, like a 30-second sort of thing. And so it's like you just get into where this is just what you do. It's kind of like brushing your teeth. You know how you have a way that you brush your teeth. You don't realize it, but
Yeah.
it's like if you really were to stop and analyze, you always brush your teeth the same way, but it's such a habit that you do it without thinking. And so you want to develop these systems that happen so organically that you don't even think about them. And then again, that is eliminating decision fatigue. So you're not having to
Yeah.
think, what do I do when I get up in the morning? What do I do before I go to bed? Like this is just what I do. So start with, two or three things that are going to make the biggest difference for you in your day and setting up your day for success and do that. But as far as then overall routines, yes, there's going to be things, life will happen and it will throw you off your routine. I like to have where I kind of have A and B, where it's like I have this is the ideal, like A is what we like to stick with. But on days when, kids are sick or I've been up a lot at night, it's kind of like, okay, we're going to move to plan B. And so having the options, then it's like, oh, we're not thrown off our routine. We're just on plan B.
Yeah.
And having that plan has been really helpful for me when those things happen because then you just switch gears and
Yeah.
you already have a
That's awesome. When the kids are growing up, so with having your older kids now and you've got the three younger ones coming up, but how do you make those decisions with there's so many opportunities for them out there? I don't want them to miss out on something, but you still have to budget for things. How do you decide those opportunities that your kids are going to do? And then how do you gracefully say no when you can't do that next opportunity?
I think at first, starting out with knowing your child and knowing yourself, although I would challenge people, my kids have really challenged me outside of my comfort zone. And so don't just place it all on like, oh, I'm a homebody. I'm like, sometimes you need to get out. Like it's really helped me with that. But each child is going to be different. Like my third born, he is almost 16 and he is just wants to do every single sport. I mean, literally wants to do every single sport. He is usually always on at least two or three teams. Like that's just how he
Wow.
rolls. And so, but like what he just got an opportunity to be on a travel baseball team. I'm sorry, travel basketball team. He's already on travel baseball. He's 7-on-7 football and two school baseball teams right now. So I guess
Woo!
more going on. And so, he goes, Mom, I want to do this. Like this would be really fun. But he said it would be Wednesday night and Saturdays and Sundays. And he's like, those are the only 3 days in my week that usually I don't have things going on. And so, he really processed that well of like, I can't feasibly, like, I don't want to give up being able to have some space in my life. But that was because over the years, we've had these conversations with him when these opportunities have come up because he just gets asked to be on a lot of teams. And we'll just have the conversation. What is feasible? Like, what can you actually do? How much is it going to cost? How much joy is this going to bring you? And just
Yeah.
really having to weigh all of that. But he's that child. Like, I would never put that kind of pressure on like my second born. She needs a much quieter life. And like that is what works well for her. And so I know that I'm not gonna, if she were in four sports, she would lose her mind. I would too. If I were in two sports, I'd lose my mind. And so just I think it starts with knowing your child, then also knowing, what's going to work for your family. So for instance, my almost 16-year-old, he is really the only one that's doing sports because my older two daughters have graduated and our younger three are young enough that they're not in any sports right now. And so we are able to handle that load of lots of different games and practices because it's only him.
Yeah.
If we had three boys that were doing our teams,
Yeah.
that wouldn't work. And so he knows that. And we've talked about that a lot of like, you're in a unique position that we can do this for you. And so we're happy to do that. But, that could change. And,
Hmm.
so we just really take it one season,
Yeah.
one sport, one opportunity at a time and really weigh the cost. And, again, like the return on the investment of, and like for him, for instance, when he got the opportunity with the travel basketball team recently, he said, Mom, I'd love to do this. This would be fun. But he said, there's not really a lot of value in it for me long term because he said, he wants to do baseball in college. Like that's his dream. And he's like, so this isn't really going to help me with anything long term. And I loved like just seeing him
Yeah.
process through that. And so I feel like the more that we just practice teaching our kids how to process things well and think of return on investment, they get older and then they kind of make these decisions for themselves and kind of
Yeah.
do their processing and it makes it easier. So.
That's so nice. All right, last question. How have you approached the budgeting, the simpler lifestyle from the biblical perspective, or just what has God taught you about Him as you have just been through that process of learning how to save money and learning how to steward your family's time well?
I love this question. So I really am passionate. Like if you go to my site, you're not going to see there's not going to be a lot of Bible verses and things like that because I really feel like my calling is to dig a well. Like if you think of people going into, to go be a missionary and there's a need for water. And so
Yeah.
like digging a well and then the people come and you get to share Jesus. And so like that's really my heartbeat. But I also am super passionate about helping the people of God get their finances in order because I really feel like that if we as God's people get our finances in order, we can do amazing things for the kingdom of God. And I've gotten
Hmm.
to see that ripple effect. Um, but so for me, it's understanding that everything that we have is God's.
Hmm.
Like every single thing that we have, it's not ours. And so that allows me to then open up my hands and just be able to live with my hands wide open and not clinging tightly
Yeah.
to I can't give this away. I can't, I need to keep this for myself, but to recognize I want to be a conduit for God to just flow through. And so for God's love to flow through, for money to flow through, and just to see it like that. And so I want to be wise, yes, for the future. For me, that's just, thinking intentionally of setting things up so that, we're not a burden to our children.
Yeah.
But also, I want to live with my hands wide open and say, God, how do you want to use me? And really seeing money as a tool to impact the kingdom of God. And honestly, there's so much fulfillment in that. There's just so much
Yeah.
fulfillment in that. I think getting to the place of recognizing that if I am careful and intentional with my money, and if we are careful with how we live, it allows us the freedom to be able to give more generously.
Hmm.
And that's really a heartbeat. And that is really what allows us it keeps us motivated. And I think
Yeah.
of years ago, our oldest daughter, I think she was maybe 10. We went to South Africa for the first time with our kids, and they got to experience just some things that they'd never experienced before, seeing like poverty, dire poverty up close.
Hmm.
And I remember that she went to visit this sweet family, and went with some friends, and she came back and I said, "How was it?" And she said, "Mom, they all live in a house that is the size of my bedroom."
Mm.
She was just like so just without words. And then she stopped and said, "I don't understand. Like,
Mm.
if there are so many Christians in the world, like, why are people still living like this?"
Wow.
And it was such a good opportunity for us to talk about, you know what? Actually, for them, like, they are happy and that's all they know. And so, for them, they were very content. Like this house that was the size of her room was more than enough for them.
Yeah.
But also in that moment, I was able to say, and this is why we don't buy you all the things that a lot of other families have. And this is why we choose to live the way that we do, and why sometimes it feels a little crazy and it feels a little outside the box. But this is why, because it allows us to be able to give and help and walk alongside other people who are struggling. And that is really what we want to do. And so giving our kids the why as well and letting them participate with us, I think has just been a really powerful thing.
Oh, I love that. That is such a great perspective. Thank you for sharing that and just appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for all the wisdom and advice that you've shared. And if you are interested in seeing what Crystal has to share, you can look her up on Instagram at The Money Saving Mom, or you can also visit her website, moneysavingmom.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Home and the Maker podcast. And for other podcasts from Shine.fm, visit the Shine.fm podcast channel.